The workbench is set up with different rolls of ribbons, different widths, different coloured roses. They are at a semi-opening stage, some a little more than others. Bouquet holders, smaller, larger, straight stems, tilt stems. Now we take a champagne rose, removing any imperfect petals. A rose stripper is being used on the stem. Don't apply this too hard, you don't want to damage the outer fibres. It's very good for removing thorns, extra leaves. A painted wire is being inserted into the calyx section. It's coming down the stem, and it can be held with parafilm. That's an option. If you use the parafilm, stretch it out as you're watching now. The stem is being cut. The reason for this would be in warmer weather, you would need to make sure that the rose is sealed so the moisture is locked in. So we're taking the stem, a hairpin wire, probably 0.90, 20 gauge, hairpinning and taping. The tape airlocks over the end of the stem and fastens the forked wire. Cut it fairly short. The return wire on the original rose is being cut, a small fork again being inserted and taped over. So the same process as the stem, except we had the original support wire on the rose fused in as well. Cut that short. Then we're going to join the two sections together. It gives the impression that the rose is still on its natural stem, but all of the moisture is completely locked, so the air cannot get in and dry the moisture out, and therefore the rose will wilt. See that manipulation? That's excellent in arranging for the natural stem bouquet. And at that junction, take your ribbon across, and that covers that wide area where that manipulation takes place. So you'd finish off with the ribbon. The tulip has in fact been wired in exactly the same way. And you could cut that if need be, rewire the stem and follow the same process. Now the rose again is being cleaned and arching over the thumb, pulling down with the index finger and middle finger, we're opening the rose. If the rose is too young, those petals will bounce back or tear. So you need to gauge the length of time that you have the roses before you start this process, which would usually be 2, 3 or even 4 days from a very tight bud form. Now each of these roses has a full wire support. These stems have not been cut. The wire has been inserted down the stem, as you saw earlier, and these are being grouped together in a Posy formation to form a natural stemmed bouquet. Why would you need that wire support? If there's any weakness in the necks of the roses, you could find that 1 or 2 may start to wilt, and that wire will stop this from happening. You can also use a covered wire or a parafilmed wire. The green painted wire certainly inserts easier up into that calyx section. We continue arranging in a rounded formation. The doming, the actual shape that you're looking at as we work around the circumference up to the centre on this bouquet is very gradual. That's your choice. You can actually make it quite domed, or you can make it flatter. Flatter is more fashionable at the moment, but trends change. All of the roses are being held at the same junction point and angled slightly through the hand. This formation can be made on a spiral if you continually turn the bouquet and continue the same movement in spiral placement through the hand, or alternatively you can cross the stems. Whichever method you use, neatness is paramount. Make sure the junction is very neat and very tidy. With the sizes of the blooms, look at these. If there's a difference in blooms, perhaps start with the tighter ones, work down to the more open around the edges. So therefore you need to have your flowers set out on the workbench so that you can clearly see the flowers you wish to use. Probably see that I'm looking through the roses now, selecting the most suited size for the particular placement area. If one rose is recessed down and the others are higher, that's a problem. You just need to have a nice, flowing, continual, gradual stepping formation. The natural rose leaves on the stems are very strong. When you're making a natural stemmed bouquet, any preparation should be done quite quickly. Don't leave the roses out of water for any length of time. It is more important with roses, but really that's a general rule for any flowers that you're going to use. And since this particular one will drink, then at the completion, put it back into water. So the flowers are keeping up their full nutrient and moisture level. If you use the technique that you saw at the beginning of this presentation of cutting the stem and rewiring, you would have exactly the same formation. It would look exactly the same, but it would certainly be safer for a very hot day. More work involved, however. So there we've got the camellia leaves. These are slightly larger. They have been wired through the central vein, halfway up, for support. The gauge wire that has been used is 0.90, 20 gauge in imperial, and these are being inserted into the tie point. It's a longer wire that has been used and will make a complete circumference right around the edge of the outer roses. Do be careful when you work on this placement that you don't have leaves that some are out, some are in. Make it quite symmetrical, nice and round, because this is a round design. Because the backbone of the leaf has the wire support, you'll notice that I'm able to arch those leaves out from around the perimeter of the posy. This gives a more natural flowing look and is very important to the design. If you did have any large rose leaves around the perimeter, probably you would need to remove those because you don't want them to interfere with the perfect placement of the camellia leaves. You can see the junction in my hand. The stems are nice and clean. We will shorten those. They'll be cut before completion. And we're checking any placements around the perimeter. The bouquet would then be at a stage, if you were happy with the placements, you'd take your ribbon. The roll that I have in my hand at the moment is number 5 width, but more than likely, yes, the number 9's the choice. So the number 9 width ribbon is being taken around. You can tie that in a knot. Because that is at the junction where you've held, that will hold. Now, after we've tied that, you can actually put a bow on if you wish. It's an extra embellishment, which is your choice, depending on how natural you want this to look. So I'm just checking final placements. So that's your natural stemmed Posy bouquet.